You can judge me if you want. I won't stop you. Honestly, I don't blame you. What I did, it sounds wrong. It feels wrong. But here's the thing nobody tells you. Behind every mistake, behind every moment where you cross a line you swore you never would, there's a story. A story you only understand when you're standing right there, tangled up in it, drowning in all the messy, complicated feelings that no one else sees. For me, that story started on a quiet evening, one of those evenings where everything seemed normal, but the air was thick with something unspoken. I caught my friend's husband looking at me. Not just a quick glance, no. It was like he was seeing me for the first time, really seeing me the way you notice a color you never knew existed. I remember the way his eyes held that look, like a secret just barely restrained, like he was fighting to say something dangerous, but delicious all at once. And that moment? It felt like time stopped. I swear, you could hear the soft creak of the wooden chair I was sitting on like it was the only sound in the whole room. Pause. There was the faint clink of wine being poured into a glass, the kind of sound that's supposed to relax you, but only made my heart beat faster. You want to know what happened after? You want the juicy part? The part where everything went off the rails? Well, here's where it gets crazy, my best friend. The woman whose husband was looking at me like that, she suggested something so wild, so unexpected, it almost broke me. I'm not proud of what followed. I'm not even sure I fully understood what I was doing in those moments. But if you're anything like me, you'll get it. The pull between right and wrong, between loyalty and desire, between the comfort of what you know and the danger of what you want. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about being human, flawed, desperate, aching for connection in the darkest places. And it's a story I need to tell you, because maybe, just maybe, you're standing exactly where I was once. After that night, the night I caught Mark looking at me like I was some secret he'd just discovered, everything started to shift in ways I didn't expect. But let me take you back to how it all began. Because before the guilt, before the temptation, before all the heartache, there was just me, feeling invisible in my own life. I'm Emma, late 30s, a loyal friend, someone who's always been there for others, but lately felt like she was fading into the background. After a painful breakup that left more scars than I liked to admit, I found myself craving something real. Connection. Not just the surface kind you have in passing, but the kind that makes you feel alive again. That's where Sarah comes in, my best friend since college. Sarah, with her easy laugh and that way of lighting up a room like she owns it. And then there's Mark, her husband. Mark is complicated. Charming, yes. Confident, absolutely. But there's a subtle intensity about him. Like he's always holding something back, something dark and intriguing just beneath the surface. I remember the first time I really noticed Mark. It was at Sarah's place during a small gathering. Their home was warm, cozy, the kind of place where you feel safe slipping off your shoes and just being yourself. I was there because Sarah invited me, sensing maybe I needed a distraction. What I didn't know was how much that night would change everything. We were all chatting, laughing, the usual easy banter. At one point, I noticed a picture frame on the wall hanging crooked. I reached up to fix it, but I wasn't quite tall enough. That's when Mark stepped over, his hands steady and sure as he adjusted the frame just so. It was such a simple gesture. Innocent, even. But I swear, the way his fingers brushed mine sent a ripple through me, something electric, something I wasn't prepared for. His eyes caught mine as he stepped back, and for a moment, it wasn't just polite acknowledgement. There was something else there. Something unspoken. I remember thinking, was it just me, or was there something beneath the surface? That look didn't disappear quickly. It lingered longer than it should have, like he was trying to figure me out. I told myself I was imagining things. I mean, he's my friend's husband. Of course, I was imagining things. But that night planted a seed of doubt, of curiosity, of something dangerous. I was in that place where you feel unseen, like you're a ghost in your own life. But when Mark's eyes met mine, it was like he saw me. Not just the surface, but all the cracks and shadows I was trying so hard to hide. It was the kind of attention I hadn't felt in years. From that moment, the dynamics between us subtly shifted. We were still polite, still friends on the surface, but underneath there was a current, unspoken and thrilling. And that, I think, is where stories like mine begin, with a look, a small touch, a moment that feels too electric to ignore. After that night, things didn't explode or crash like you might expect. No, it was quieter, almost harmless, at least on the surface. Sarah and Mark invited me more often, dinners, casual weekends, group outings with friends. Their lives were busy, but they always made room for me. And I was grateful, honestly. I thought it was just friendship, a place to belong again. But then, little things started to catch my attention. I noticed Mark's smiles, the ones that felt too quick, too knowing. The way his eyes would find mine across the room, lingering just a beat longer than polite. And sometimes, when he passed by, his hand would brush against my arm or back, just the lightest touch, but enough to send a shiver down my spine. At first, I tried to shrug it off. "You're imagining it," I told myself. "He's just being friendly." But there was something in those moments that felt different, charged, like there was an unspoken question hanging between us, waiting for an answer we both were too scared to say out loud. I started to wonder, why was I suddenly so aware of him? Was it just loneliness? After my breakup, I hadn't felt this kind of attention in years. Maybe it was the quiet ache of wanting to be seen again, to be wanted. Or maybe it was something darker, something that felt dangerous, but thrilling all at once. The more time I spent around them, the more I realized there was an emotional connection building, too. It wasn't just the small touches or the stolen glances. It was in the quiet moments apart from Sarah, those times when Mark and I found ourselves sharing jokes that only we understood, or stealing a glance and smiling like we shared a secret. One night, Sarah fell asleep early, leaving Mark and me alone for the first time during one of our movie nights. The movie was a blur, honestly. What I remember is the way he turned to me and asked about my dreams, not the usual, surface stuff, but the real ones. The ones I hadn't spoken aloud in years. We talked about regrets, about loneliness, about the parts of ourselves we hide even from those closest to us. And in that moment, I felt something awaken inside me. I felt alive again, like maybe I wasn't invisible after all. But beneath that spark was a knot of fear. What was I doing? Where was this going? Every laugh, every glance, every touch felt like walking on a razor's edge. And I couldn't tell if I was standing at the edge of something beautiful or something that would tear everything apart. I kept asking myself, why am I letting this happen? And even as the answer frightened me, a part of me didn't want it to stop. It was one of those evenings that started out ordinary, but somehow ended up changing everything. Sarah was swamped with work, a big project she'd been stressing over for weeks. And I stayed late at their place to help. I thought it was just another favor between friends, nothing more. The rain had started softly at first, then turned into that steady downpour that makes the world feel smaller, more intimate. When it was time for me to leave, Mark insisted on driving me home. I hesitated at first. The air between us had shifted lately, and I wasn't sure what to expect. But I said yes. The car was quiet except for the soft hum of the engine and the steady patter of rain against the windows. The kind of silence that buzzes with tension, like the calm right before a storm breaks. Then, without warning, his hand brushed against mine. It was the lightest touch, but it sent an electric shock straight through me. My breath hitched and my heart started to race, even though every part of my brain screamed to pull away. And then he said it. The words I'd been dreading and secretly craving all at once. "Emma, I can't stop noticing you. You don't have to pretend anymore." It was like a confession whispered into the darkness, raw and real. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and dangerously close to crossing a line I'd promised myself I never would. I fought it. I told myself I was loyal to Sarah, my best friend. That I was better than this. but the emotional dam inside me cracked just a little. The way he looked at me like I was something rare and precious made it so hard to resist. There was a moment, a breath held between us, where the world shrank down to just the two of us. The rain outside faded away. All the reasons to stay away vanished, and for the first time, I felt what it might be like to give in. Did we kiss? Did I lean in or pull away? Honestly, I'm still not sure. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. My mind was a whirlwind of desire and guilt, love and betrayal. What I do know is that moment changed everything. After that, nothing was the same. Not for me, not for Mark, and certainly not for Sarah. They say the real line isn't crossed in a kiss or a bed. It's crossed in a thought, in a look, in that moment when silence says more than words ever could. After that rainy night in the car, Mark and I didn't speak about what almost happened. We didn't need to. The air between us had changed, like something invisible had snapped, and now, whatever was holding us back had loosened just enough to let something dangerous slip through. The affair didn't start with fireworks. It began with quiet betrayals. Little things. A longer hug than necessary. A shared glance while Sarah wasn't looking. A text that said too much without saying anything at all. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just emotional. Just attention. Connection. That I needed to feel seen again. And he made me feel that, like I wasn't just someone filling in space anymore. Like I mattered. But soon, the texts turned into late-night conversations. Long, emotionally intimate messages that bled into sunrise. We weren't just talking about life anymore, we were talking about us. About what we felt and what we couldn't say out loud. He told me I made him feel alive again. That with me, he could breathe. And I was falling for the way he made me feel. Not just beautiful, but wanted, understood. He knew how to read me in a way no one had in years. He'd look at me and see the pain I thought I was hiding. And then he'd say the exact thing I needed to hear, not sweet lies, but truths that peeled me open. Still, the guilt followed me everywhere. Every time I laughed with Sarah, I felt the burn of betrayal beneath my skin. Every time Mark touched me in passing, I felt torn in two. And yet every time we were together, it felt like the world paused. Like the noise went quiet, and for just a moment, I wasn't broken. I kept telling myself we were careful. That no one suspected. We had rules. Never meet in obvious places, never linger too long, never message anything we couldn't explain. We used nicknames. We deleted texts. We wore masks of normalcy when others were near. But the tension was always there, humming beneath the surface like a live wire. I remember one afternoon, Sarah invited me to help with dinner while Mark was grilling outside. We were standing in her kitchen laughing, drinking wine, and I could see him through the window, flipping burgers like everything was fine. Then he looked up straight at me and our eyes locked. It was just a second, but I felt it everywhere. The pull, the ache, the panic. Later that night, I found a message from him. That look, it nearly broke me. I wanted to walk through the glass. That's when I knew we weren't in control anymore. We hadn't just crossed the line. We were living on the other side of it. And yet every day I asked myself, what am I doing? How did I become this version of me? Because I loved Sarah. Not in the way I was beginning to love Mark, but in that deep, soul sister kind of way. We'd been through everything together. She held my hand after my last breakup. She brought me soup when I had the flu. She told me once, "You're the closest thing I have to family." And here I was, hiding a secret that could destroy her entire world. But even with the guilt, even with the fear, I couldn't stop. I tried. I swear I tried. I told myself I'd end it. That I'd confess. That I'd leave. But then I'd see him. And I'd fall all over again. And it wasn't just the way he looked at me. It was the way I felt when I looked back. Like I was finally being held together by someone who saw every broken piece and loved them anyway. They say secrets have a weight. But what they don't tell you, is how that weight grows. Quietly, constantly, until one day, you realize it's pressing on everything. The way you speak, the way you laugh, the way you breathe around the people you used to be yourself with. It started small. Sarah asking if everything was okay, with that soft, almost motherly concern in her voice. You've seemed a little distant lately. Is something wrong? And I smiled, lied, said I was just tired. Blamed work, blamed life, blamed anything but the truth, which was sitting like a stone in my chest. But she noticed things. How Mark and I didn't look at each other as much, or maybe how we looked too much when we did. She picked up on the weird tension in the room when all three of us were together, how I'd shift in my seat, how he'd leave the room just a second too quickly, how I'd find an excuse to follow. And Mark. God. Mark started changing. He got bolder, braver, maybe even reckless. He started sending texts at riskier times, during dinner with Sarah, during group hangouts. Once, while I was sitting across from her, phone face up on the table, I got a message that simply said, "I can't take it anymore. I want to be with you, really be with you." I swear my pulse went cold. I turned the phone over like it had burned me. And Sarah, she didn't say anything. But she looked at me, with those eyes that had known me since college. Eyes that could read me like pages. That was the night she started asking different questions. Like, do you think Mark's been acting strange lately? Or, you two talk a lot, huh? You get along really well. I laughed too quickly. Denied too easily. Which, of course, made it worse. And somewhere in all of this, Mark stopped trying to hide how he felt, at least from me. He'd brush my shoulder when Sarah was in the kitchen. Whisper something that curled behind my ear and lingered long after he left the room. Touch my hand too long when no one was looking, or maybe when someone could be looking. He kept saying things like, "Why are we pretending? Why can't this be real?" But it was real. Too real. And too dangerous. I started panicking. Lying more. Making up entire stories just to cover one evening, one message, 1 second of eye contact too intense. It's like I was living in two versions of myself. The friend. The betrayer. The woman Sarah trusted, and the woman taking what she didn't even realize was slipping from her hands. I hated myself for it. Hated how I looked in the mirror. Hated how easy it was to fall into Mark's arms even while that guilt screamed louder than ever. And the more I pulled away, the more Mark leaned in. He started suggesting we stop hiding. That maybe he should tell Sarah. That maybe we were meant to be together, and all this secrecy was just delaying the inevitable. I remember one night, we met in the back of his car after he ran out for errands. Rain tapping against the windshield. My heart louder than the storm outside. He looked at me and said, "Emma, I'm ready. I don't want to sneak around anymore. I'll talk to her. Tonight, if you want." I didn't answer. Because I didn't know what terrified me more, the idea of losing Sarah forever. Or the idea of never having Mark completely. I kept hearing this voice in my head. Was I selfish? Was I desperate? Or just human? Sarah started calling less. Texting shorter replies. There was distance growing, but not the kind you can measure. The kind you feel, like cold air between words. Once, she looked right at me over coffee and asked, "Is there something I don't know?" And I wanted so badly to say yes. To fall apart in her arms, to cry into her sweater like we used to when we were younger and life was simpler. But instead, I smiled. And lied. Again. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering how much longer I could keep doing this. How long before everything collapsed? Because secrets don't stay secrets forever. And hearts? They're never as quiet as we hope they'll be. It happened in the most ordinary way. No dramatic music, no stormy night, no slammed doors. Just life. Doing what it does best. Revealing things when you least expect it. I'd left my phone on Sarah's kitchen counter. We were all there, another casual evening, trying to pretend the world hadn't shifted beneath our feet. Sarah had gone to grab some wine from the fridge. Mark was outside talking to someone on the phone. I was in the living room pretending to read. And then I heard it, the unmistakable chime of a message. My heart stopped. Literally stopped. I'd forgotten to silence my phone. And then her voice. Emma. Her tone was wrong. It was slow, confused. Like she was trying to piece together a language she didn't speak yet. I stood too fast. Knocked something off the side table. It hit the ground loud, but not loud enough to cover what came next. I'm sorry. Why is Mark texting you? I miss your mouth. Time froze. I didn't even move. I couldn't. My lungs forgot how to work. I could hear my pulse in my ears. She walked into the room holding my phone like it was something dirty. Dangerous. Like it had just killed something between us. She didn't yell at first. She just looked at me, and I swear, that hurt more than anything else could have. Because her eyes, they weren't angry yet. They were shocked. Wounded. Trying desperately to believe it wasn't what it looked like. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Nothing that mattered. She asked again. Emma, why is my husband texting you like this? And then, Mark walked in. Timing. Cruel, merciless timing. He saw the phone in her hand. The message lit up on the screen. Saw me, pale, frozen, breaking silently from the inside out. And he didn't deny it. Didn't rush to lie, to smooth it over, to fake confusion. He just said, Sarah, I'm sorry. That's when she broke. I've never heard someone cry like that, not loudly. Not screaming. Just this low, devastated sound like something vital inside her had been torn in two. She looked between us, and that was the moment I knew. That I'd destroyed her. That I wasn't just some side character in her life. I was the knife she never saw coming. She said things I'll never forget. How could you? You were my sister. Was it fun lying to me every day? Did you even feel bad while you smiled in my face? I didn't defend myself. Because what could I say? That it didn't mean to happen? That I never planned to fall for him? It would have sounded hollow. Pathetic. Because in the end, all that mattered was that I did. Mark tried to speak, to explain, to make sense of something that couldn't be made right. But Sarah, she was already gone in her heart. Her trust? Shattered. She left the room. And didn't slam the door. She didn't need to. The silence she left behind screamed louder than any exit could. And Mark. He looked at me, eyes filled with guilt and confusion and something else, maybe regret. He didn't come closer. Didn't hold me. Didn't say, we'll figure it out. He just whispered. I didn't want it to end like this. Then he walked out too. And I was left there, alone. With nothing but the echo of what we'd done. And the weight of what it had cost. I collapsed onto the couch, hands shaking, chest tight. The room still smelled like candles and red wine. But everything warm in it had vanished. And in that stillness, I kept hearing the one sound I couldn't unhear. The sound of Sarah's voice breaking. That was the moment. The one where the affair stopped being a secret thrill. And became a scar I'd carry forever. Because when you hurt someone who once trusted you blindly, you don't just lose them. You lose a part of yourself you don't get back. After it all came crashing down, there was just silence. Not the kind that soothes. The kind that presses on your chest and makes the walls feel too close. The kind that makes every minute stretch like an hour. Sarah stopped answering my messages. Stopped looking at me when we passed each other in town. She didn't yell. She didn't block me. She just disappeared. That hurt more than any fight ever could have. Mark? He vanished too. No explanations. No long, dramatic goodbye. Just gone. I guess he knew the damage had been done. Or maybe he realized he didn't want to stand in the wreckage with me after the fire. And there I was. Alone. Utterly, breathtakingly alone. No best friend. No lover. No version of myself I could even recognize. I used to think regret was just guilt in disguise. But it's more than that. It's this aching awareness of everything you can't undo. Every word you can't take back. Every look you wish you'd never returned. There were mornings I'd wake up and forget for a moment what had happened. Then it would hit me like a wave pulling me under. That sick drop in your stomach when you realize you are the villain in someone else's story. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without hearing her voice again. You were my sister. So, I did what I didn't know I needed to do. I stopped running. I started therapy. The first session? I sat on the couch, arms crossed, full of excuses. But somewhere between the silence and the tears, I cracked open. And the truth came pouring out, not about Mark, not even about Sarah, but about me. The empty parts I'd tried to fill with validation. The loneliness I'd been drowning in long before the affair began. The way I had confused attention for affection, desire for worth. I started journaling every night. Pages and pages of things I never said out loud. Some entries were messy and full of pain. Others were just questions. Who am I now? What kind of woman betrays her best friend? And is she allowed to grow? I walked a lot. Miles through neighborhoods where no one knew my name. Under trees that didn't care what I'd done. By lakes that just reflected, without judgment. And slowly, very slowly, I began to feel something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet. But clarity. Because I realized I hadn't just lost Sarah or Mark. I hadn't just destroyed a friendship or ended an affair. I'd lost the illusion of the woman I thought I was. The always loyal, always kind, always good girl. The one who thought she'd never, ever cross that line. And losing her, as painful as it was the only way I could start finding who I really am. I'm not proud of what happened. I'll never be. But I am proud of what I chose to do with the pain. To face it. To learn from it. To stop hiding behind the idea that my intentions were enough to justify my actions. Because healing after an affair, especially when you're the one who broke something, isn't about seeking forgiveness from others. It's about earning back the trust of the one person you live with every day. Yourself. And that's a journey no one can take for you. It had been almost 8 months. 8 long, soul-stretching, quietly brutal months since everything fell apart. Since Sarah stopped being my home. Since Mark stopped being my secret. Since I stopped being someone I even recognized. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I'd ever see him again. Part of me hoped I wouldn't. Another part feared what it would stir in me if I did. But life is funny like that. One evening, I walked into a friend's engagement party. Just a casual gathering at a cozy rooftop bar downtown. And there he was. Mark. Across the room, holding a glass, talking to someone I didn't recognize. But I recognized him. His stance. His half-smile. That air of control that once felt magnetic. Except now, it felt distant. Dulled. He looked older. Not in years, but in the eyes. Like someone who'd finally realized that charm can't fix everything. That some choices cost more than we ever expect. He saw me before I saw him. But when our eyes met, time paused. Just for a breath. No drama. No rush of emotion. No racing pulse or old sparks. Just a moment. Heavy. Quiet. Real. I didn't look away. Neither did he. We didn't speak. There wasn't anything left to say. Because what do you say to the person who held your secrets? Who set fire to your life right alongside you? Do you say I'm sorry again? Do you ask if they're happy? Do you bring up a kiss that broke everything? No. Sometimes, the loudest conversations are the ones spoken in silence. And in that brief, breath-held glance, we both said all there was to say. I nodded, just slightly. He gave a faint, almost invisible smile. And I turned. Not out of anger. Not out of shame. But because I had finally learned when to stop holding on to a chapter that's already been written. I walked away with my spine a little straighter. Not because I had it all figured out, but because I finally knew who I wasn't. I wasn't a secret anymore. I wasn't someone's mistake. And I wasn't the woman who needed to be chosen to feel worthy. I was just Emma. Messy. Healing. But whole. Some people walk into your life like storms. They shake you, strip you bare, leave you gasping for air. And when they leave, nothing looks the same. But that doesn't mean the storm was meaningless. It means it changed you. And maybe that was the point all along. Because some stories don't end with a kiss. Some don't end with closure tied up in a neat little bow. Some end with a quiet understanding. And a promise to never forget. Not the pain. Not the love. Not the lesson. Just the truth. Have you ever loved someone you weren't supposed to? I mean, really love them? The kind of love that's quiet but consuming. That creeps in slowly, almost gently, until one day it's too loud to ignore? Would you risk everything? Your friendships, your own peace of mind. For a chance at something that feels real, even when you know it's built on a lie? I used to think I'd never be that kind of woman. The other woman. The betrayer. The broken one. But now I know, we don't always see the line until we've already stepped across it. And sometimes, the hardest stories, the most honest stories, are the ones no one dares to tell out loud. But I just did. Not to be forgiven. Not to be understood. But to let someone, maybe you, know you're not alone. That even in the aftermath of love gone wrong, there is still space to breathe, to reflect, to become someone new. And maybe, just maybe, that's where the healing begins. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been caught in a love that felt forbidden? Did it break you, or teach you something you never expected? I read every word. No judgment. Just real hearts, telling real truths. Subscribe to Cheating Confession Diary if this story made you feel something. Because the stories we tell here, they don't flinch. They go where others won't. Raw, real, and impossible to forget. I'm Emma, and this was mine.